Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Tachiwakua Book Club. It's our honor to announce our special guest, Tim Maxville. Mr. Maxville is Mississippi Choctaw and Chickasaw and Eastern Band Cherokee. He is a 1991 graduate from the Sequoyah Indian Boarding School and has a college education in Native American law and Native American studies. He was mentored into the American Indian movement by Wilma Mankiller, and he has been Grassroots AIM activist for 30 years. And he is a registered flute maker and flute player with the Choctaw Nation, and he has a deep love for his people and the preservation of our culture. And welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
So we're going to go ahead and give you the floor.
Well, hi, as you know, she said, my name's Tim Maxville. I'm Mississippi Choctaw. I live here in Oklahoma. I'm on the Creek Reservation here. Like she said, I graduated from Sequoyah Indian Boarding School in Tahlequah back when Wilma Mankiller was chief of the Cherokees. So that's you know, as a child, I guess all of us young, well, the majority of us young Indian kids, we always looked up to the Aimsters, you know. So whenever she told me I should, you know, hey, you need to follow these people and do those. So I said, well, that was pretty cool. So, you know, I do it, but since then, I don't know. It's just been a whole lot of living and doing things and, you know, fighting issues, whatever comes up, you know, there's always something happening, you know, even like right now, ICWA's under attack, you know, land back issues, MMIW issues, there's mascots even, you know, I mean, there's even in 2022, there's still a lot going on. So we've got Oklahoma has recently had the McGirt decision here, which gave a majority of the state back to tribal control. But of course, the governor in the state's fighting the tribes here over that a lot. So that's another major issue that's going on here.
For the people who don't know, can you tell us a little bit about the McGirt decision and how it impacts sovereignty and the ramifications of it?
Well, basically, this, and I've always heard that since I was a child, the state had broke the treaty, which it, you know, the 1866 treaty, which gave all of us sovereignty over our lands here, the 5 civilized tribes, and McGirt, I forgot his first name. He was a prisoner, and yeah, he committed some heinous crimes. I guess evil. I don't even want to discuss what he did, but what he did do is what the tribes, I guess, never wanted to do, was challenge the jurisdiction and who has the sovereignty. So that's what he did, was he filed and said, hey, wait a minute, I should be in a federal court right now, not state jurisdiction, you know, according to treaty. So when that happened, that set precedent, and we went back to our treaty rights here. But like I said, what's going on though too is the state's fighting that, because there's so much, you know, like even with like oil and minerals, you know, the state would get our money from that stuff from the you know, like that is on Indian land. Well, now that's supposed to all go back into the tribes. Well, the state's fighting that. They're losing money, you know, and of course they're using they're trying to, and right now they're not. Our courts aren't set up for the loads that are coming in now. You know what I mean? Our courts have been very minimum over the years. And so if we think about it, what's been going on here since, you know, well, even before Oklahoma became a state, and some of these cities and towns that were already here, they've been collecting money, fines, taxes, and things like that from Oklahoma citizens and people here for a long time. So their courts are built up. They've got plenty of people to run them. You know what courtrooms look like. They're marble, and you know what I mean, how they're built, and that our courts aren't like that yet. So, you know, it's basically they've been stealing from us. The way I look at it is they stole from us, and now they want to come back and say, well, your courts aren't. Well, then you, the federal government even, should have an obligation to bring our courts up to the level they need to be. So, because that's their fiduciary duty is to do what's right for the tribe. So that's a big issue here right now, so it's kind of weird. Jurisdictions all broke up, different police agencies, non-native police agencies, or some of them want to be cross-deputized, some of them don't want to be cross-deputized. It's just kind of weird. So, but that's like I said, that's another one of the main things we're fighting. But what it did do is I shouldn't say solidify, but it did strengthen sovereignty. Obviously, I mean, that's a major thing to win basically half of the state back, so we'll just have to see what keeps going. Obviously, we just had our election here for governor, and of course, the state's red state, so they voted the guy right back in, you know what I mean? And they all complained about how he was running the state and all of that, but people here will go, I haven't paid attention to the latest election. His first term, he won with 48% straight party vote. So I can pretty much say that it was straight party voting that gained his second term here as well. So we'll be fighting with him for another 4 years.
I have a question kind of out of term, because we're putting the questions in the chat, but how are they able to bring charges both in state and tribal court? I mean, that's kind of, I know that's happening to some people there in Oklahoma right now. Are you familiar with that? And
right now it is kind of weird. I personally don't know anybody who's got double charged. Yes, I do.
Yes.
I do know somebody. They don't have state charges now that I think about it, because I just think they have federal charges and tribal charges.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we're probably thinking of the same case, and that's kind of crazy. Like, that seems like a kind of a double jeopardy, for lack of a better word, to me.
Yes, and that's the whole thing, though. It is double jeopardy, but it's not unconstitutional, because tribal courts are sovereign nations, right?
So how did they gain the federal jurisdiction and the tribal court jurisdiction for the same occurrence?
That I've not figured out yet.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Like, the case that I'm thinking of specifically is for last year, they had a
February 7th.
February 7th, they had where Leonard Peltier, people went and they stood up for him, and they went to their federal courts on tribal jurisdiction. And in my opinion, it was some hokey charges.
Well, if you ask me, I actually think that was a setup, I believe, and I don't think it had anything to do with trying to put, like, couple 3 people in jail or give them some weird wonky charges. I think it was done to attack sovereignty in the McGirt case. I feel that Mayor G.T. Bynum of Tulsa, and this is just my opinion, I can't say, but I think Mayor G.T. Bynum of Tulsa and Kevin Stitt, governor of Oklahoma, used that officer that came there that day and did all of that as a provocateur, because when it came out in the news, they were saying that the officer's car was surrounded by people, and that he had got beat up, and that he had all these injuries, and
Right.
This was even the chief of police that was saying this on our local news. Complete lie. That was a complete lie. There was nothing. Basically, nothing of what the police said was actually true to the event. And even when I would go on to the police thing, and say, "Hey, they're lying," I said, "Well, let me show you the video," so because I was there. I was right there when it all went down, so.
For those, to give a little bit of context for people that don't know, there was a protest and just standing up for Leonard. And at that, this police officer, from what I witnessed, I wasn't there, but from what I witnessed from the video, a police officer drove by and was flipping the people off. And so then they were saying free Leonard, and the police officer tripped. And now those people have charges both in the tribal court and in federal court. So I think it is challenging that McGirt decision in sovereignty and just taking a bite away from our rights and as sovereign nations. So I don't know. It just seems like there's a constant attack always. And I want to kind of talk a little bit about ICWA. Maybe you can fill us in on that. People go, how is big oil representing?
Because that's another attack on sovereignty. I mean, that's obviously because that's what they want. I believe it was Orrin Lyons who had said that years ago, said, it's always been about the land and will always be about the land. Us Native American people that were here could have really been anybody, as far as I think, because they were after the resources in the land. So we could have been anybody. We would have been treated the same. There still would have been genocide. There still would have been all of this stuff going on, I believe. You know what I mean? No matter who was here, because it was like that. It's about the land, and that's what it's about now. I mean, right now, the American dream is based on owning property. Literally, it's based on owning property and equity in property and those things. I mean, that's even a lot of times how generational wealth is passed and all those things, and you take people that don't have those type properties, or even if they are minorities, people of color who are becoming more successful in this modern society, there's a lot of hoops to still jump through something when it comes to owning property, so that is a major thing, is owning property and the minerals that lay underneath that land, because that's the next point. We all know about trying to get mineral rights to land. You might buy the land, but boy, it's another thing trying to buy mineral rights to land.
Right.
Could you tell us how you feel about what's going on Pine Ridge with the uranium? That's the whole reason that Leonard went to prison. The life expectancy there is the lowest in the country, 48 years old. Cervical cancer alone is 500 times the national average, and they're still illegally mining for uranium there.
Well, we can just look at that. Like, we know that they use that environmental racism, so to speak, not even just against, well, the racism part would obviously be against people of color, but they do that even around in poor, to some of the poor, impoverished areas, where it's even white folks, here in Oklahoma, Pitcher, Oklahoma, that they had mined that town for just like the chat and rock that come up out of the ground, the stuff that built little roads and stuff with, and the lead and poison that comes out of those chet piles has, lots of those, they had the town's a ghost town now. They had to move out of the town, and, I know something like that. I don't know if that was done. I think that was just done more out of people not realizing what's going on. But we do know there's places in inner cities like that where large companies will come in and they'll, won't be held accountable for what they're putting into the ground, or in the water.
Petrochemical companies, for example. The rates of autism and cancer around petrochemical plants skyrocket.
Well,
and those are poor neighborhoods.
The whole thing with Standing Rock, that was that pipeline, Bismarck said, no, you can't put that pipeline north of us. We have too large of a town. If something was to happen, that would affect all of these people here. You have to put that downstream of us. Kind of weird. They know. Yeah, I do. I do feel like that they purposely, yes, use that, like that economic environmentalism and environmental racism like that, yeah, to attack communities and people. I definitely believe that's real.
Absolutely. Corporate agriculture is another big one. They want to control the food.
Yep.
Yeah, and just getting back to the, for anybody that doesn't know here, ICWA is the is it Indian Child Welfare Act?
Yes, Indian Child
And
Welfare.
right now it's being challenged before the Supreme Court. And is it Oklahoma that's challenging it, or Texas, or?
Texas. It's
Yeah.
Well, I say it's a husband and wife from Texas are challenging it. Yes.
And
Leonard is very concerned about that. Can you tell us something about what's going on?
like, could you explain what the Indian Child Welfare Act is and how big oil plays into it? It's crazy.
Well, as we were saying, you know, the big oil would play into it is in the fact that they want to destroy or weaken sovereignty. And especially like that, we just recently had, like I said, half the state of Oklahoma go back into control of the tribes. So what's on tribal land is under, you know, the state's fighting for that. They want that oil, you know. Well, so that's what all the oil companies want. That's why the state wants it, because it's the oil companies that go in and pump it out and all that. And they want the taxes from that, right? Instead of that tax money going to the tribes, you know. So that's where big oil comes in, is just like that. They want in on our lands. They want to be able to drill. They don't, you know, so that'll be part of that. That's why their involvement is they want to tax sovereignty so they can get to the money under the ground.
And break down the family of the Indian children. And with ICWA, when a child's taken from their home, the tribe steps in and they're able to have them go into a home that's an Indian home. But if they break down that family, they break down the sovereignty, and it all comes back to the natural resources.
Yes.
And I mean, I don't know how many people know that, but it's like you're going to break down a Indian home just to get to the oil. And that's literally why
it is Indigenous Termination, nothing less than Indigenous Termination.
Yes, native erasure.
Julie Richards is going to be here next week, and she's going to talk about how big oil has destroyed their reservation. She has got about 20 kids living with her that have been orphaned by meth. And she says big oil is responsible for everything that has happened to that reservation. Yeah.
That's, we probably here in Oklahoma, it probably would have been different like that if there was here. What they did back in the day was the allotment system came in, where the government forced each individual to take 160 acres. So everybody spread out, you know, instead of living close together in tribal towns like we were, spread everybody out. Can't come together for ceremony, those things anymore. People live too far away, you know, so.
Yeah, so speaking about native erasure, somebody just put in the chat, they brought up WABOs, and for somebody that doesn't know what that is, maybe you could talk a little bit about it and what the acronym means and what's going on with that.
Okay, yeah, with the WABO situation, the WABO's acronym, for wannabe Aboriginal. And a lot of people use it specifically for Black people, but it's really an interchangeable label that can be used with any wannabe or pretend in, so to speak. You know what I mean? It's not just for Black people, but a lot of times when people use it, you kind of know that it's probably a Black person that's saying these things, that they were that Black people are originally from here. I mean, it's a weird theory thing they got going. Like, it's just really weird because I've heard so many different tales. One of them is that they're from here and that the white man came here, then went back to Mongolia and grabbed some people from Mongolia, brought them back here, then decided to take them to Australia to lighten them up a little bit, then bring them back here so they could get the land, and that the white people had took from Black people. And I was like, why didn't the white people just keep the land when they took it from the black people? And then the black people was here. Like, that's what kind of theory is this? So it's pretty preposterous. You know, I mean, it's things that, you know, people are. Luckily, it's not a large movement, I guess I should say. Luckily, it's a movement that it's going to be somebody who's uneducated, maybe even has some mental issues going on. It's definitely going to be people who don't have critical thinking skills, don't have the the critical thinking skills to research properly, you know. So they might watch a 3-minute video, or earlier, before this meeting started, we were talking about an author, and I believe his name is David Emotep. And like I said, in the early 70s, he had wrote a book claiming that African people had came here, you know, long before whites, and that like the Olmec heads, you know, down south are created and styled after black people and all of this stuff. And the guy actually was, or is, whatever, a scholar, you know, and I believe is either archaeology or anthropology, maybe both, but actually was a scholar in the field, but not in the exact field of Mesoamerica. So I believe that was like 72, 73 area when he wrote the book. And I just can't remember the title. If you put in his name, David Emotep, Imhotep, Imhotep, you should be able to find it. Anyhow, I believe it was about 1980, and I can't remember the guy's name, but another professor who was actually, his field of study was Mesoamerican archaeology. He challenged the David Emotep to a public debate, debated him and won, beat him out, you know, said, nope, that's all implausible. So the problem though is now, like in 2022, if you go look like on Amazon for David Emotep's book, it's there. And it explains how he figured out that the Olmec heads and these things are African. It doesn't say though that, you know, his theory has been debunked. It doesn't tell you any of that. You'd have to know how to research and start looking into who David Emotep is and find those things. But if you was just common Joe Blow, or maybe a little uneducated, you would see that and go, oh, that's got to be real. This guy's a scholar, you know. So there's some things like that. So anyhow, luckily it's not a large movement, but it is a movement that I'm seeing. I used to never see, and living here in Oklahoma, of course it's different in Oklahoma. We've got a lot of black people here, and a lot of them are Afro-Indigenous mixed. So I'm not accustomed to black people like, well, we were here before y'all. I mean, they all, you know, I mean, most of the black folks in this state, even though the 5 civilized tribes, some of the people had slaves, a lot of the black people and Indian here in this state, we get along real well, you know, and we can usually come together real well on issues, because it's a lot of times they're so closely related, you know, or the people are at least getting treated the same, or with the same inequalities, you know. So yeah, it's definitely an issue. And with those black folks who are thinking that way, I understand it. I don't want to be mad at them or wish harm on those people, because I understand it's a product of colonialism. You know, many of us Indian people, we still have a little bit of our culture. You know, we don't have it all, and we wish we did. We're not complete, but we still have a little bit of our culture. We at least know our tribes. You know, could you imagine not even knowing your tribe though, and not even knowing how to even remotely figure out what may be your tribe? To me, I think that would be intense, that you didn't have, I mean, you just didn't have that one thing to firmly grasp to, you know. I mean, at least we have that. Even if we come from a tribe that's lost its language and these other things, at least we have that tribal name to relate to our ancestors through. So I can understand where there could be some black people who would latch on to those type theories of they were here first, or they were the original natives and those type things, you know, because they're coming from a place of pain, a place of loss, you know. And the same hand, there's white folks, you know, Caucasian people who do the same thing, you know. They don't say that they were here first as Indians, but it's always that they come from some Indian, you know what I mean? And they're, while they don't come from oppression, they do come from a place where they've lost their tribal ways when it comes to the white folks, you know, who are the wannabes. And I mean, what most of them don't know what really they are. I mean, like, we see that all the time. Somebody, you know, well, I'm an Italian, and then they, not that DNA test, but then take a DNA test and they're not Italian at all or whatever, you know. And so it's, you know, most white people really, at least in the US, they're so mixed now, people really don't know exactly what they are, and they're certainly not following these deep customs or ceremonies or anything like that, you know. I mean, people follow American ways, and, you know, I guess that's okay, but that's not really culture, is it? You know what I mean? I mean, that's really not culture, is it? I mean, I guess it is a culture, but it doesn't seem like culture to me. It's just, you know, it's kind of dry, you know.
I wanted to say something like, and that's not against people who are embracing our collective people's ways, which is having a symbiotic relationship with our Mother Earth.
No,
And as an Anishinaabe woman, we have the seventh fire prophecy, which says that this is the time of the seventh fire. And when people we can either have the choice of, you know, embracing that symbiotic relationship. And it's up in my actual prophecy, it says that it's up to the white people to do that. And this is the time, because we'll either go on the scorched path where everything's destroyed, or we can do the ways of the collective Native people here on Turtle Island, which is to have a love and appreciation, and not to overuse things and what's the word, exploit. And so it's a good, I'm just saying, like, it's, so people trying to embrace that, but embracing that is different from you can be an ally and embrace that and say, this is the way that I know to be right, without taking away and further oppressing our voices as Native people.
There's a difference in between coming to somebody or whatever, a group, respectfully and saying, hey, I like the way I watched you live or act. I want to know how I can be a part of that and better myself. I mean, even in religion, you know, with the church, I mean, they beg people to come through their doors and ask to be part of it. You know what I mean? I don't want to be mean to somebody and be like, oh, you respect our ways, that makes you it doesn't make them a wannabe. It makes them somebody who wants to be an ally, and, you know, and be something, you know, maybe they do recognize that, like we were just talking about, how, you know, that American culture really isn't culture, you know. And since those people may not have their ancient ways to relate to, they want to relate with us, you know. And I just about have a feeling that probably when white folks were still in their tribal states, a lot of their tribal practices were probably very similar to our practices. You know, I mean, we know, like with the Irish and all that, they got clans and everything. I mean,
Can I ask you about the split that I'm seeing right now? I just put something in the chat from the invasion and occupation of Alcatraz. Talks about Native religion, a religious view of the world that seeks to locate our species within the fabric of life that constitutes the natural world, the land, and its various forms of life. I embrace that. We've got this thing going on with the alt-right that has firmly taken hold of the Republican Party. Have you heard of them and their mission? They want to make America 100% European. They say they are the true Americans, and they are trying to set policy on that theory. Have you heard of these people?
No, I haven't heard of that exact group. I know that there's obviously, white supremacists and those type thing, those type hate groups that, want to cleanse and the Americas, yes, and those type things. But I really haven't ran into the, what you're talking about as the original white people saying they're the originals yet. But
So I have a few questions from the chat for you, Tim. Are you ready for that?
sure.
Okay, great. One person said, can you tell us about the 5 civilized tribes? What are they?
Choctaw, Cherokee, Chickasaw, Creek, and Seminole.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And you mentioned something about challenging the jurisdiction regarding sovereignty, minerals, water. I know you talked at some point, to a pretty fair degree about that. Do you have anything more about the challenges to jurisdiction regarding sovereignty for all the, minerals, water, resources, basically, that this white culture wants, as opposed to what, and I know you can't speak for all nations,
Sure.
but the sovereignty that the different nations feel they truly have, and we believe truly have.
It's, it does come down to maybe a fine line too, because there are, like, a few years back, Oklahoma City, obviously they're growing. They had a demand for more water. And I don't know how I guess probably just because of location, but they came to my tribe, and my tribe signed a deal with them to use waters from Sardis Lake, which is a lake located on our reservation.
Okay.
So do we hold things like, do we own water? I don't know that we own water. I think it is up to us to share water with people. Obviously, water's life. So if there's people who are moving, sure, we should. But in the next hand, cities, states, their corporations, townships, they make money off that water. I know we get a little bit back, but not, like, I'm not getting a check from the water. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now they're I guess I've seen again, they're proposing to probably come to the tribe and ask for some more water from somewhere else, because I guess, demand has gotten higher, obviously, in the last handful of years.
Oh,
So.
yeah. I am.
But it is kind of strange that like that, or maybe it's neat too in the same hand that you have cities like that, large cities like Oklahoma City, that has to come to one of the tribes and say, hey, we need water.
Mm.
We need water. Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, and this is my comment, and I obviously know little or nothing about it, but it seems like you should be, as individuals in the group, compensated for that, instead of
Yeah.
screwed over for it.
Yeah, depending, like the Osage, they have head rights, and so they do get monies related to like the oil that comes out of the ground. They'll get per family a certain amount of money, depending on how many barrels of oil came out of their leases on their land.
So it comes down to agreements that are made with perhaps the government, perhaps corporations, right?
Yes. It's usually like with the Osage, they're not a 5 civilized tribe. So they decided to keep their land intact as a whole. That's why they have head rights. The 5 civilized tribes, as I was saying earlier, they were forced into taking land allotments, and those individuals were given ownership over that land, that one, the 160 acres we got. So obviously you have people who are poor, in society.
Yep.
we were talking about what's land's worth money. A lot of them had to sell. Like while I live on the reservation, my actual home and land was purchased from a white person who had bought it from another native. This land was still allotment land owned by an individual. So it's just one generation removed now, you see? So it's,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's different here in Oklahoma because the individual owns the land. The tribe has land too, but like that, when it comes to allotments, the individual owns the land.
Interesting.
Yes, and that's been a setup for a long time back because when that started back then, when you had all the lands, because like the Osage murders in the 20s, that was 1920s, early 1920s, same time as the Tulsa race riot went on. I'm about,
Right. Yeah.
where I live, I'm about 5 or 6 miles from where the Tulsa race riot occurred, and I'm about 3 miles north of the Osage reservation, which is about 30 minutes basically from Pawhuska, where a lot of the murders occurred in that area. But that's what you had, land prospectors coming in for the oil and killing people. What the state had done was said that people of color had to have a guardian if they had an estate that was worth over a certain amount.
Oh my God.
Well, obviously, yeah, legally a guardian's supposed to do
Guard.
positive for the trustee, the ward, they was killing people, having them fill out wills, and then they was killing them. Even my family, the removals to Oklahoma started in 1832. That was when the Choctaw, who were the first tribe of the 5 civilized tribes to be removed here. My family were able to resist the removals until 1903. We were in the final removals. So in 1903, the government hadn't allotted money to bring the Indians here. So what they did was they subcontracted out to individuals. Well, it was a lawyer from Oklahoma City, a Caucasian lawyer from Oklahoma City, and he had 2 other business partners, and they were going down to Mississippi and rounding up people like my family who had been hiding and running. They didn't speak English. They didn't know anything about white society. And so they would tell them, here's the government's, it's time to go. You got to be removed now. They would have people sign wills, people who did not know English, didn't know what a will was. They would sign a will that if they died before they got to Oklahoma, that this lawyer would get that land allotment that they were going to receive. And so what he did was he put them on cattle cars, sent them up here. Most of them didn't have clothes, blankets. It was in the dead of winter. He sent them up here in cattle cars, and they brought us to Ardmore, Oklahoma, and they would hold them captive. This was in downtown Ardmore, Oklahoma. They would hold them captive in a building named after a family whose last name was Love. So the building was called the Love Building. And they were holding these Indian people. Like I said, this is my great grandmother. This is 1903. So I'm not that far from it. I'm only just, 2 generations away from that. They would, like I said, they brought them in those cattle cars with little to no clothes, and they was holding them in that building there in the dead of winter with little to no clothes, no blankets, no nothing. A lot of them were dying from pneumonia and exposure. And those people were getting the land, so that's even then, that's how, land hungry these people were, that they were just ready to let humans die. Like you wouldn't, I couldn't even treat animals. I couldn't even hardly treat bugs like that. Bugs. You know what I mean? Like literally, you know what I mean?
Yeah. God.
So a lot of it all does. That's how much worth there is to land and minerals and what's underneath it, that people will kill, let people die, do whatever it takes to get their name on it.
Well, God knows we go, and I'm just going to speak my mind here, you know, being a child of the 60s and 50s, 70s. And God knows we have gone into a lot of different countries under one assumed and articulated purpose. But the truth has been, we really want the damn resources, and that's it. And so many times, those countries are people, quote unquote, of color. And oh my God. And so it's astonishing because this may or may not come as a surprise to most people here. But growing up, I mean, I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and we weren't taught any of that. It wasn't until I took history classes in American Indian history, and this was it was kind of a breakthrough class in California, in the California college system. And I took an Afro-American history, and this was in 1971. We began to hear about things, and still there's so much. That's why I joined this group, because there's so much I never heard.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate your sharing all this. I have a few more questions if you're ready for them.
Sure.
Okay. Someone asked, could you tell us a little bit about your advocacy on TikTok? Yeah.
I had a pretty good following for a little while. I mean, I did. I had upwards of 80,000 followers, and I would just bring up issues, that obviously affect us Native people in negative ways. I don't know. I guess just the way that particular platform is with its algorithms and those things. I did end up having a lot of the what we were talking about earlier, the Wobbos.
Yeah.
Come on,
Can't help.
I would make a lot of videos, because I could use their comments or whatever they were saying, to make an educational video over it, which that's usually what a lot of them did, because I'd be able to revert back to, whatever treaty or whatever thing was going on. A lot of those Black people, when they claim that, they usually use one of the 5 civilized tribes, and a lot of times it's Cherokee, again with the Cherokee, and Cherokee and Blackfoot. So I was able to use those as educational points and point out, like, well, no, you're not Cherokee, whatever, so
yeah.
And then like I said, when we was talking before this meeting started, I don't know what happened. I think what it was is they have it's called mass reporting. And if so many people report an account for a certain violation, algorithms will just take it down. A person's not going to view your account, not nothing. Your account's just getting taken down. So I guess I think I got hit with that attack. I think that's what happened.
Probably,
I think I got hit with the mass reporting attack. But then when I finally found out what the violation was, because they banned my account. They took my entire account down, which I was on the TikTok monetary fund. I got paid to be on TikTok because I had so many followers. It wasn't much. It wasn't like I'm sitting here getting rich off TikTok, or
Oh, I know. I'm getting a little viral myself, and I'm not making any money.
Yeah. Like they owe me like $40 right now. If that tells you, what I'm saying. So anyhow, but when they finally told me why they banned, because they banned my account, and I said, well, hey, why don't y'all tell me what I did wrong? I tried to send them a message, said, so when I create my next account, I won't do that. Well, they said, well, you're not creating the next account because your device is banned. So I can't even create another TikTok account, even if I quote want to. Yeah. I
Oh
guess
my God.
Yeah, go buy a new phone or something like that. I don't know. But anyhow, yeah. So they literally banned me off TikTok for violent extremism, even though I never mention violence or any of that stuff, or as far, well, if I did mention it, I wasn't condoning it. You know, I wasn't
Right.
telling, no, yeah, you go out and do this. No, I would never do that, especially when it comes to like our AIM and just even protest rallies, get-togethers. I never tell people to come with weapons. I never tell people to
Oh,
do
no,
those things,
no.
because that's how you get people hurt, killed,
Yeah,
put in jail,
crazy.
those type of things. And I just could not take the responsibility of that. You know, I just, if people got hurt after, I couldn't live with myself. So I always tell people to, like, even if I know we're going to face some negativity, I'm like, come with positive attitude, be praying beforehand, you know what I mean? Ceremony, all those things. So your mind's in as good a place as it can be to deal with these things.
Right.
So we don't have to use violence, you know, and that's the next thing too, is we know these things are going to be seen. So I get wanting to stand up for yourself, but I think it's more impactful if we see the other side using all the violence against us, even if we just stand strong in prayer and not with our fists up, but holding hands and take the, I think it's important that we remain as unviolent in the eyes of people as we can.
Yeah, I'm of two minds. And part of it is like, yes, you have to take the higher road for so many reasons. And I think you know many more of them than I do. And yet, as a human being, I want to be protective and go, no, that can't happen anymore. But I am not in your position.
I can tell
I
you, like,
can't.
we were talking about the February 7th ordeal here in Tulsa. And I've dealt with some stuff, boy, and I got a little scared there at the end,
Oh God, yeah.
because there was police everywhere. Hundreds of police were there in riot gear. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Assault weapons, the whole 9 yards. And they had just appeared in moments. So that meant they were on standby in the area, ready. That's another reason why I feel that was a setup, because there's just no way that kind of police presence could show up in a matter of moments.
Oh yeah.
They had the whole federal building surrounded by city police in moments. I mean, in moments, and they were in full riot gear. So
they were ready.
you know, that was when it started getting scary. It was at the end. They started positioning in groups, you know, in front of us, making walls and lines in front of us, you know. And I leaned over to one of my good friends and I was like, are you watching what I'm watching? Because there was a lot of elders there, older
Oh,
people,
yeah.
women, those type things, you know. I mean, like, even myself, I'm 49 years old. I ain't got no business out rolling around trying to fight no police in the street. You know what I mean? And I will, but I don't want to have to stand in front of women and children huddled up against the wall while we take rubber bullets and pepper gas. I really don't want to do that.
Nope.
You know, I mean, I'll subject myself for that, but I don't want to. Luckily, just as me and him, as I said, I think we're going to have to try to get people out of here. Luckily, the groups of these that were forming just started breaking apart and dissolving. I don't know. Creator came down, saved us all, but I was scared for a minute. You know, I was scared.
Yeah.
I literally got scared for a moment, more so for the, you know, I wasn't scared for myself and getting hurt, but I was scared for the people. You know, I mean, we had people there, we had elders there who have been at Wounded Knee, you know, 80 years old plus people, you know, you can't, what do we do with that? Well, you got to protect those people. Well, so it's,
Again, to put a little context into it, it was a peaceful protest for Leonard.
It
And
was.
the thing that I thought was interesting was similar to the Jumping Bull compound incident and the shootout. There were, within a short period of time, they were surrounded by police, and there were only supposed to be 2 police on Pine Ridge during that time. Am I right, Paulette? Like 2 police in that vicinity? And so it just shows another more oppression. You're there just to support our brother Leonard, and there's cops everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, like, that's just oppression. It's.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Clearly.
my 2 cents.
Yeah, you're right, Kimberly, 100%. And that was, like I said, that wasn't something just because they tried to say, well, it was about some parked cars, a couple cars that were parked in a no parking zone, but that's no big deal. You just pull up, and, if you're an officer, you just pull up, stroke some tickets and stick them under the windshield wiper and roll on down your way. And if it's a tow zone, then you just pull up, call tow truck, and have them come tow the cars. You don't have to start a fight with people. And that's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened.
So I have a few more questions while we still have some more time here. Someone asked, how do you feel about the civil rights movement cruising past Indigenous people? Does that resonate with you or no?
We've always been at the bottom of the social ladder.
Yeah.
So for me, it's not indifferent. It's just normal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes, I do wish, I wish there was never even a civil rights movement as far as in the need to have one.
Well, yeah.
And even in that, in the civil rights movement, that actually might have taken away from sovereignty a little bit, because in the civil rights movement, I can't remember what the act was called, but there was an act that said that the tribes could not create a constitution that had anything that went against the U.S. Constitution. So basically, every freedom that a person enjoys as a U.S. citizen, the tribe had to match that. Which in general, those are, freedom of speech, yaddy. But
Right.
As a sovereign nation, what if we don't think everybody should have the right to just get up and say anything they want at any point in time? Or what, you know what I mean? I'm not saying we do,
Yeah.
but shouldn't we have the choice to do that since we're a sovereign nation? Why did the Civil Rights Act get to determine, so the civil rights are cool, and then, they're not cool. And then, they're sometimes for everyone and sometimes not for everyone. That's.
And I think one thing that a lot of people, and certainly a lot of white people, don't realize here is that every single one of the nations has their own culture, their own approach, their own way of looking at things and dealing with things. And it's not like a blanket thing. And so when it comes to something like civil rights, every nation is going to look at it differently. And that's what I got from what you just said.
Yeah. Like our election laws, there's there's a part of our election laws I don't agree with. And that, of course, but we're a sovereign nation, and that's how it was voted for. So my people voted on this. They don't want their information given out to candidates, like for tribal council and chief. Yeah, they feel that a lot of them, well, I get enough of that crap from white people elections. I don't want it from Indian. So we have an election law that says, candidates don't actually have access to voter registration. Whereas in your American city, state, and all that, if I go file to be a candidate, well, I get access to voter registration, registered voters, so I can send them information or go knock on their door or whatever it may be, so it's sovereignty.
Tim, you keep talking about constitutional law and the Constitution. How have they gotten away with violating Leonard's constitutional rights over and over and over again?
It's just because it's obviously it's because of the power and who they are. They've manufactured an entire case against him. That's, somebody was saying that to me the other day about.
And we're caught doing it.
Yes, and have been caught doing it. Exactly. I mean, I don't know how that, I mean, I don't understand it. Like, he's the longest held political prisoner now. I just don't understand how.
We're
more-
trying to get him transferred to medium security. He's only got 8 points, but they still have a double murder charge on him and consider him a high-risk offender. Somebody asked me if he had a menacing walker.
Okay, so real quickly, I wanted just to clarify something because oftentimes I think it's a mistake that's made, and Leonard's corrected me on this. He's actually the longest held Indigenous prisoner.
Yes.
There's other people that are political prisoners that were, probably Paulette could tell us about that because she's from the Jericho movement. There's actually longer held political prisoners. Matula Shakur, I believe, was he held longer, Auntie, or?
Not necessarily Matulu, but there were other prisoners that were early Panthers that were longer held, but Leonard is the longest held Indigenous political prisoner.
Oh, well, forgive me if I was mistaken on that.
No, it's
No,
often a mistake, yeah.
No, people say that all the time, but the reality is that Leonard, along with these Panthers, all are in the 49, 50-year, 52-year-old being held. And so,
Yeah.
but within the nations of Indigenous people, he is the longest held political prisoner.
Yeah, right.
And you have a couple of white political prisoners that have done time with Leonard, and they're right up there along in age and everything with him. But as far as Indigenous people here, he's the longest held political prisoner.
Thank you, Paulette. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
and Leonard, he pointed that out to me because he says he's not the only one. And that just shows to his character and to what a good human being he is.
Yeah,
Well,
there
that's
was
because he did time with them, and actually people on the inside have more unity and work together better than people out here, which is really becomes the problem when you're trying to get somebody free. Leonard and Sundiata and all these folks, Matulu, Bill Dunn, they all have done time together because they've been down so long. And so they support each other. Well, no, don't worry about me. Take care of so-and-so. He's in poor health. You should really work on his case right then. And people out here don't have the same sort of respect for their wisdom and their unity and things like that they should. They should really listen more to what Leonard and to what Matulu and some of these prisoners are saying about the reality of life, instead of trying to say, well, he's inside, let me speak for him. Well, no, Leonard can speak for himself and Matulu and all these people. And the thing is, you have to listen and not feel that you have the right because you're out here to tell them what to do and stuff. So yeah, Leonard and these folks, I visited Leonard many times when other comrades have been visiting other folks, and everybody waves at each other and says hi and talks and things like that. And it is because they respect the struggles that each grouping has had, whether it's for sovereignty or, constitutional issues and things like that, that they don't have the respect for that out here to listen to people talk about that. So that's really what needs to happen, is people need to not have a filter, but to listen to what Leonard is saying. And, and then be respectful to other nations and other cultures with the same respect that Leonard has for them.
Thank you, Paulette. That's right on.
That's right. People just, have to try and solve everybody's problem instead of letting people work within their nation to deal with what's going on.
Yeah. I have another question, and it's from a totally different direction. But someone said, how long did it take you to make a flute? To learn how to make a flute?
It took a few tries. Yeah.
I used to make ceramic flutes for a little company in the East Bay. And yeah, it's not an easy thing.
I've made a couple real nice looking sticks with holes in them. Basically, they didn't sound. You know.
Could you play for us for a little bit, Tim?
Yeah, sure. Whenever I guess we could probably just end the meeting out with that. So whenever y'all are ready.
Real quickly though, I just had a few announcements. So after the song, if you'll all stick around, I have a few announcements to make. So
Please.
but go ahead and play. It's
would
our
love-
pleasure to listen to you.
Okay. Yeah. No. But yeah. It definitely it took me a little bit. I pretty much taught myself a friend of mine. He's passed away now, Jeremy Wallace. He was kind of the face for Chickasaw Nation for a little while. You know, he worked for their cultural department, things like that. And he was a flute maker and flute player. And so I'd asked him one time if he would teach me how to make flutes. And this is a flute he had made and that I'd bought from him. And so we just never really had found the time to get together for him to show me how to make a flute. So what I did with the flute I bought from him was I spent a lot of time shining a flashlight through all the holes and looking at it every way I could. And then started trying to, you know, think about how I would replicate that, and then started making my own flutes from there. So I'm self-taught on how to make them. So anyhow, I always liked the flutes a lot just because of what they are, you know, how they incorporate wood, you know, and obviously the tree itself comes from the ground, you know, and we find these little pieces of beauty somewhere inside the log or inside that tree and bring it out, you know, and then it takes, you know, human breath, you know, to express what's inside of here, you know, our hands to shape it and then our breath to express the sounds that come out. So it's one thing you know, obviously drums, you know, like that. Drums are the same, you know, kind of type thing, you know. I love those type of instruments where they're natural, so to speak, you know. Well, let's see if I'll like I said, I'll play you a song real quick and we'll kind of end it out then.
Can you all hear?
No, many of us are having trouble hearing.
Yeah, I can't hear.
All right, can't hear. Let me see.
This is a silent song?
Hold on, I was trying to get a mic. Yeah. All right. Well, no, I thought I could get my microphone to work over there, but it wasn't picking up. So
Okay.
I don't know what I can do then other than to see. I don't
You're
know
good, Tim, you're good.
Sorry.
Do what you can.
It's fine. You've been wonderful. Thank you so much for
And I want to
enlightening us.
throw something in here. Someone told me you might be a Toasters and Moose Taste the Biscuit fan.
What's that?
You know, Taste the biscuit lady, Toasters and Moose.
Oh, hi. I don't know that. I'm not familiar, but I
Oh,
think
okay.
it sounds interesting. Maybe I
Yeah,
think I
Tim,
wanna
you
be a
know.
fan.
Tim, taste the biscuit. You know that.
Oh,
Goodness,
yeah.
goodness,
That's
that's
her.
That's
Estelle.
me.
That's her.
That's me. I'm Toasters.
Okay. All right. All right.
Okay, so, are you
Anyway.
gonna try and play or should I go ahead and go on with the announcements?
I couldn't get my mic to come on, and I don't think if y'all wasn't hearing it a while ago, I don't know of any other way to get it any louder,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I just really want to thank you for coming. It was just a really great to have you here. Thank you. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit. I guess it's been 3 years, right, Catherine? About 3 years ago. Okay. Leonard asked me to start this book club to bring awareness to his case and to talk about issues that were important to him and kind of give him a voice. And so it started out me and Catherine.
Come a long way.
we come a long way. Like first it was just me and Catherine hanging out, talking on Zoom. And so I just want to thank everybody like for coming here and spending your time, especially. And so for the last year, it's been going pretty good. But Leonard's asked me to work on his food forest movement. And for people that don't know what that is, he's sitting in prison and he's worried about Mother Earth. Okay. Sum it up. He's worried about us. He's worried about the health. He's worried about future generations. And so I'm going to start working on the food forest movement for him and doing the things that he wants, which is, he said to me the last time I talked to him, there's almost 8 billion people on Earth. Imagine if everyone planted one tree and a fruit bearing tree for future generations. And so I'm going to be working with some different organizations to kind of get that going and hopefully to eventually on his land on Turtle Mountain to plant trees and to get it ready for when he comes home. And there's some people from the Brown Berets and American Indian Movement are going to help me facilitate that. And so I just want to thank you all. So I'm going to be handing my hosting responsibilities over, and I wanted to introduce you to Maria. She's going to be helping with hosting.
This is so awesome.
Yeah, Maria, she's an Indigenous activist, and she works hard to bring awareness and understanding to Leonard Peltier and his case, and to MMIW, and she has a passion for sharing an understanding of an Indigenous heritage and language, and for all human beings, not only for the people Indigenous here. But I just want to take this moment to introduce her, and she has a wonderful husband and 2 beautiful daughters, and it's a pleasure to have you here, Maria. So I'm passing the torch.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly, for everything that you have done. You've been epic.
Thank
It's
you.
been wonderful to be your partner all these years.
I love you, Catherine.
I love
And
you too.
welcome, Maria. Thank you.
Welcome, Maria.
Yeah, thank you. Oh my gosh, this is such an honor. Thank you.
Are we having a meeting Monday to discuss the book club?
So a lot of it I have help with, but a lot of it I do myself, like over the different platforms and sharing, TikTok, Clapper, Facebook, all of the different Instagram.
A lot.
And so we're going to have a meeting on Monday. If anybody wants to come and volunteer to help, carry on this vision of Leonard's, it's the same Zoom link here. I welcome you all to come and join us, and we can delegate some of the tasks. And I just want to thank you all for just, I feel proud, and Leonard's proud of our book club, and he's proud for bringing forth and giving him a voice. And it's just, thank you all. So it's not goodbye. It's just, I won't be around as much. So, thank you. And so,
Thank you,
John, do you have
Kimberly
any-
and Catherine and Estelle and Maria.
Yeah.
Everybody, yeah.
They'll still
Yeah.
be here.
And don't forget, call the White House, and Don has an announcement regarding senators and some other.
Yeah. Nobody has heard from Leonard in 3 weeks. I did a wellness check. They said he's okay without checking. If anybody knows anybody that knows a senator, we need a senator to call the prison and ask for a wellness check. I'm hoping it's hysteria, but I have a bad feeling about this lockdown. We also need to get him to a medium security prison. It's gonna take another lawyer to do that. We are going to, do you want me to talk about this now, Kim, or later?
Yeah, he needs, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, we have 2 originals up for sale. Working with some people in Taos, New Mexico, we're gonna have a revolving art show, and we're gonna be raising funds for attorneys that can get Leonard into medium security prison. We need to do that to get him out. So be on the lookout for that. And if anybody knows anybody that knows a senator, please contact me. I'm easy to find. Leonard's website is www.freeleonardpeltiernow.com. You can message me on that. And thank you all of you for being epic. And Lenny, do you want to pray us out if everybody is done with announcements? Anybody have anything else to announce? Oh, Julie Richards, next Thursday, Pine Ridge. We lost Eileen Janice, the woman that worked with the youth, and Julie Richards is going to be picking up her mantle. She is the founder of Mothers Against Meth, and she is a truly awesome person. I met her at Alcatraz.
Thank you.
She will be here next Thursday.
Thank you.
Lady, you want to take us out for the night with your prayer?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Beijing do les Quran Himasa. Chisukado Jetsanadi Joe Balana. The needs and the consa bear Zayat eho it's a screen dollars. Ha shada na now conspejon yitate Beijing he kid Beijing here. Beijing he caught arts continue not a combayat o Beijing a screen. Ado de con chast way just he in hitch a heart see a con but citizen bizarre but citizen a screen dollars a but Bache needs and Joe Butland son they con arts. Die Komba Citizen, die Kom Maria Elena, do Dawn, do Estella, do Tate, Kimberly, Otto Sage, die Kom Catherine, Bahas Seal, but Citizen, Citizen Bahin Lado, Benjamin, in City case of Benjamin. Yadet die Kondigen hat Beat he Nabiat Hitsat some Beat Aro die Kon Yatakilzona die in Traditine Benjamin Hanat Hindolis Aro die Kon Nihizad Beat etc. and Nastlin Oles die Kon a Hinane die Leonard Peltier by it on Bened new but set the sin. Aruba in la Bindi Huana Tato les Ashon le Shatrat, Yen Long, Yen Yut Etian Jopa, Yen Jone, E Concoro, Ha Apiaro, Shada Apiaro, Na Apiaro, Na Conspiaro, Behejon a Sclaim, Behejon a Sclaim, Behejon a Sclaim, Behejon a Sclaim, oh, Metagios, your armor relations.
Oh,
Dale.
Oh, thank you,
Thank you
Lenny.
very much, Lenny.
Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you Monday or next week.
Yes, definitely. Love y'all.
Love you.
Bye.
Thank you.